the Arab Revolt against the Ottomans in 1916 to 1918, which resulted in the formation of a dozen new nations from the corpse of the Ottoman Empire, is one of the most important events in modern Middle Eastern history, yet is poorly understood in the Western world. Known principally as the backdrop to the story of Lawrence of Arabia, the revolt is a fascinating tale, but it is not one we will discuss today. The Arab Revolt did not arise out of the Hejaz out of nowhere, but was a result of the specific political, social, cultural and economic developments of the Arab world in its time. To understand this revolt, we must discuss the Arabian world under Ottoman control, how things changed in the 19th century, and how these led the Arab peoples to revolt. In this video, we will explore the factors which led the homeland of the Muslim faith to rebel against the last caliphate, and how these causes and conditions were connected to the coming of capitalism to the Ottoman Empire. Welcome to our video on the causes of the Arab Revolt and how the Arabian Peninsula was forever transformed by modernization. As you might guess, the revolt would ultimately be influenced by the ongoing First World War. And like with so much of the world, the events of the conflict had the power to change history radically. Now is the time for you to shape the world by taking command in the Great War with our sponsor Supremacy 1914. It's a massive PvP online strategy game where you pick a real country to lead through World War I, facing up to 500 other players in persistent real-time games that can last weeks. You'll pick your units and technologies, choose allies and enemies via real diplomacy with other players, and compose an epic strategy to take over the world. You'll use all the classic World War I units, like machine guns, cavalry and planes, plus secret weapons like tanks. Play on both mobile and PC to update your real-time plans whenever you need to. Play for free by downloading the game via our link in the description, and you'll also get an exclusive gift, 15,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription for free. But it's only available for 30 days, so get it right now. Before we discuss the lead-up to the Arab Revolt, let us take a broader look at the peninsula in the 19th century and the peoples who lived there, with a focus on the Hejaz part of the peninsula, which faces the Red Sea with Egypt, as this region was the eventual heartland of the revolt. By the early modern age, the Arabian Peninsula mostly consisted of nomadic tribes of Arabs called Bedouins, with sedentary settlements clustered along the coast, such as the town of Jeddah on the Red Sea. In what is now modern Yemen and Oman, the southern tip of the peninsula had plenty of outposts for commerce, facilitating the silk and slave trade with merchants from India, Morocco and Europe. In the 19th century, the ethnic and religious diversity of the Arabian Peninsula was astounding in its scale. Muslims were the majority in the peninsula, but the faith was divided, with Shia living in the east and Sunni in the west. The Hejaz itself had many denizens belonging to the Shafi school of jurisprudence, whereas the broader Ottoman state was Hanafi. Christians and Jews also lived on the coast, and the Hejaz had some Greek and Armenian families in port towns like Jeddah. The Ottoman millet system attempted to govern relations between these ethnic and religious communities with varying degrees of success. Nomadic communities like the Bedouin tribes were nigh impossible for the Sublime Porte to control, while the Sharifs, local elites who controlled commerce and land ownership in the port settlements, were easier to tax and regulate. Some positions, like the Sharif of Mecca, were very close to the Sublime Porte, and the Ottomans even had a ritualized purse ceremony where they would send money to Mecca on caravans to financially assist the city. Historically, the Hejaz was geostrategically and religiously important for the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans conquered the region in the 16th century and made sure to use it to solidify their Islamic legitimacy as the Caliphate, similar to how control over the city of Rome was a powerful symbol for Western empires. Despite the importance of the region, the Ottomans, seeing themselves as civilized sedentary inheritors of high Persian culture, looked upon the local nomadic Bedouin population with disdain, considering them to be underdeveloped profligates. During the late Empire, the Ottomans consistently struggled with unrest in the region. In the 1800s, the empire faced a revolt from a fundamentalist movement called the Wahhabis, who were soundly defeated and banished to the center of the peninsula. Shortly after, the Albanian Egyptian dynasty of Muhammad Ali Pasha took control of the Hejaz and Syria in the 1820s up to the 1840s. Despite being nominally an Ottoman vassal, the Egyptian overlord was de facto independent and a rival to the Sultan's power, and his land seizures greatly weakened Ottoman control in the Arabian Peninsula. The sultans soon retook the territory, but many local sharifs remained anxious and suspicious of them. Europe was also expanding its world system at this point, bringing capitalism into the Ottoman Empire. By bringing investments with foreign companies, Europeans entered Ottoman affairs on an unprecedented scale, making the Ottoman state economically dependent on Europe and causing unprecedented social change. This included the Hejaz, and local fundamentalists also stoked the flames. Massacres like the one in Jeddah in the 1850s were convenient for Europeans to impose legal capitulations on the Ottoman Empire, which gave Europeans privileged status. This massacre occurred after local sharifs used resentment against Christians who were scapegoated due to increasing European influence, and resulted in the deaths of 21 people, including the French consul and his wife. It is this geopolitically tumultuous situation that we see in the 19th century, where the causes of the revolt lie. Throughout the 19th century, a concept called nationalism was on the rise as a form of political organization. Nationalism was born in Western Europe, but would eventually spread as an idea amongst the intelligentsia of various countries around the world. In the Ottoman Empire, this occurred within various religious and ethnic groups, as well as the ruling class. Throughout the 1880s, the Turkish elites of the Ottoman Empire began shifting away from seeing the Ottomans' vast multi-religious and multicultural demography as a virtue and began to embrace pan-Turkism. Earlier, however, the Sublime Porte had responded to rising ethnic and religious tensions in the empire by accommodating ethnic diversity through Tanzimat reforms, a sweeping array of economic, social and religious reforms meant to introduce industrial development in the empire. They also supported the idea of pan-Islamism by appointing 60 Arab deputies to the Ottoman National Assembly, making a statement that all Muslims, be they Arab, Turk or any other ethnicity, were equals. This initially invoked optimism amongst Arab intellectuals. However, the shift towards Turkism caused tension amongst the minority ethnic groups, including the Arabs. Pan-Turkism was more dangerous for Christian minorities, like Greeks and Armenians, but it is easy to see how the rise of Turkish supremacy in the Ottoman Empire concerned the Arabs too. Ottoman nationalism was also fundamentally predicated on technological modernization, which caused tensions towards nomadic peoples like the Bedouins, whose pastoralist way of life was in fundamental opposition to the emerging industrial economy. Throughout the 19th century, tensions grew between ethnic minorities in the Ottoman Empire and an increasingly pro-Turkish Ottoman elite. The gradual shift towards both Turkish-centered nationalism and the exclusion of minorities meant that many Arab intellectuals shifted towards a more nationalist viewpoint to protect their own interests. Throughout the late 19th century, Arab intellectuals like Sati al-Husri, a Syrian who lived in Istanbul, created the idea of an Arab nation built on a shared Arabic language and culture rather than religion. It should be noted, however, that such intellectual developments only really appealed to the Arab middle classes or local bureaucrats who could read and write, with the average Bedouin nomad or simple farmer being mostly indifferent. Furthermore, it does need to be stated that not all Arab intellectuals were taken by romantic ideas of Arab nationalism. Many Arab sharifs were cynical in their political goals, switching from pro-Ottoman to pro-Arab depending on their interests. Moreover, when the Arab Revolt finally broke out, many Arabs were actually shocked, for they valued Muslim piety over ethnic identity and the Sultan as the legitimate Islamic ruler. As such, intellectual history is not enough to explain the revolt's causes. Another reason the Arab Revolt occurred stems from the Tanzimat reforms and the effects they had on the local elites. We have already discussed the nationalist aspect, but as Tanzimat unfolded, the Hejaz came face to face with administrative reforms from Istanbul, which caused tensions with entrenched Arab landowners and sharifs. Up until that point, Ottoman Arab society was organized into various commercial guilds, which ran their own affairs. However, after the Tanzimat reforms, new tax regimes began to transform land ownership in the region by breaking up those old monopolies, while administrative reforms in councils undermined the power that the local sheriffs traditionally held in the region. For the Ottomans, this was seen as necessary modernization. For many local sheriffs and other native Arab elites, it was a threat to their rule. It is easy to see how these measures, when combined with shifts from Islamism to Turkism, would lead to further friction. Another method the Ottomans used to increase their control over the Hejaz was the use of passports. Passports were a hot-button topic for the local populations, as well as European powers. They were used to check who entered or left the peninsula for the Hajj, and were promoted as necessary means to stop criminals from hiding in Arabia. The Ottomans claimed the passports were an Islamic measure to make the Hajj more efficient, and the utilization of real or imagined crimes was enough to enforce their use. Many Muslims from Asia and Africa who lived in territories controlled by European colonial powers traveled to the region every year for the Hajj, and said European powers utilized this as an opportunity to intervene into what they saw as an irrational empire. These interventions included investment into infrastructure projects, such as railways, and backing minorities in their search for more power or even independence. The Ottomans, seen as a Muslim empire with lax morals and need for modernization, were constituted as an other that was in need of Western enlightenment. The Ottomans were chiefly interested in the coasts, not the desert interior, but nevertheless, they constructed forts in various inland locations to ensure that trade would run smoothly. Much like the railway coming to town meant the end of the life of the free cowboy in the mythology of the American West, the increasing securitization of life in the Hejaz was perceived as a threat by many locals, and an infringement on traditional Bedouin freedom. Another background cause of the Arab Revolt can be seen in the economic sphere, as the Ottoman Empire entered the capitalist world system. The Ottoman Empire in the 16th century was a nation of capitalist industrialization, as foreign-owned companies and banks, like the Ottoman Bank, became dominant in the empire's economic sphere. Many of the empire's Christians, previously unable to hold land or high office, began to enter the middle classes, such as the Armenians, Jews, and Greeks. As a result, industry began to grow in parts of the empire, although not in the Hejaz itself. This would change, however, when the Ottomans utilized Mecca and Medina, whose symbolism as the holiest cities in Islam made them important as a showpiece of their modernizing infrastructure. So it was that in 1908, the Hejaz Railway, which connected Damascus to Medina, was finished. This railway was built with heavy amounts of aid from France and Germany, Christian powers. As such, the Ottoman regime was careful to control the narrative to justify the building of this railway on Islamic grounds. Muhammad Arif, a scion of Shafi'ite Damascus imams, wrote a pamphlet explaining the Islamic justifications of the railway. The pamphlet is intriguing in its composition, as it counters various points by opponents of the railway, shows the Islamic character of the project, and attempts to reconcile modernity and Islam. Despite this, steam locomotives in the Hejaz still contributed to tensions between the Ottoman government and the locals. The railway brought the Ottoman army to the Hejaz and further increased political and military control of the peninsula by the Ottomans. The various changes brought disturbances to many local Bedouin and elite groups, who felt an infringement upon their traditional way of life, something which had been felt ever since the abolition of the slave trade in the 1850s. As industrialization continued and capitalism came to the empire, the combination of national awakening, political centralization, and economic disruption made the possibility of an Arab revolt more and more likely. The last ingredient of the Arab Revolt was the role of foreign powers, particularly the British. The case of Arab nationalism and its relations with Europeans is bizarre to say the least. In the 19th century, Europeans generally involved themselves in Ottoman affairs through capitulations, treaties with the Ottomans which gave them special rights. They also penetrated the Ottoman economy, such as with the aforementioned German and French involvement in Hejaz railway construction. As a result, port towns like Jeddah had communities of European expatriates, as did cities like Beirut. To these expatriates, the interior of Arabia was seen as a wild territory, and the Bedouins who ruled them were seen as near mystical beings. This Orientalism, alongside various violent uprisings like the Jeddah massacre of 1858, where Christians were murdered by locals, were used by European powers as a justification to exert influence over the Ottoman Empire and to have a more direct hand in directing the empire's policies. This also meant that various European powers built power networks with local minority leaders within the empire. For instance, Russia backed Armenian and Orthodox communities, France guarded the Catholics, while Britain championed groups like the Druze and the Jews. The Arabs in Hejaz were usually linked to these foreigners via coastal trade routes. Britain was particularly involved in the region after it broke new ground in Egypt, Sudan, the Red Sea, and the Persian Gulf. British intelligence officers in the Hejaz saw themselves as an enlightened democratic force in the region, as well as curious explorers. This sort of information was important for future events, but we must also note that the British were still on the fence as to how to deal with the Ottoman Empire. Some preferred to keep the Ottoman Empire afloat as a buffer against Russia or to avoid French grabs, but others preferred to directly control the region. One can imagine a furious cabinet debate between a proverbial Prime Minister Jim Hacker and an indignant Cabinet Secretary Humphrey Appleby on how to proceed and whether to sustain or chip parts off the Ottoman Empire. The key came with connections with local sheriffs, who eventually turned on the Ottomans. As previously stated, there were both ideological and economic developments disrupting the region, as well as political shifts towards pan-Turkism and centralization. As such, many elites who felt threatened decided to join the British. One such man is Hussein Benali, Sheriff of Mecca. Born to a family of sheriffs, Hussein was on the side of the Ottomans until 1916, when increasing nationalism and pressure on the Ottomans due to the outbreak of World War I made him consider revolting. To that end, he proclaimed himself King of the Arabs and led the revolt against the Ottomans. Eventually, he connected with the British, who provided him with material support. In the end, he became Caliph in 1924 in the Kingdom of the Hejaz, until the Saud clan rose from the deserts of Arabia and deposed him. While he envisioned an Arab state encompassing the Near East and the Arabian Peninsula, he ended up with a small kingdom and his sons with puppet states under Anglo-French mandates. We can thus see that European imperialism and local nationalism were both drivers of the revolt, not necessarily ideologically, but from a geopolitical and pragmatic perspective. By 1916, when the Arab Revolt had broken out, multiple distinct processes had contributed to the outbreak of the famous rebellion. The tribal and sectarian nature of the Near East and the Arabian Peninsula was always a cause for loose control, and one that inevitably clashed with Ottoman attempts at centralization and modernization. These were combined with the rise of intellectual movements of Turkish and Arab nationalism, which were utilized by elites to further their own specific interests. The economic disruptions brought on by globalization also brought with them changes in lifestyles and political ideologies of polarization. Combined with foreign political involvement, the ground was fertile for some pragmatic or ideological sheriffs to rebel against the Ottomans. The Arab Revolt is a testament to the enduring forces of economics and politics, and how they intersect with ethnicity and the state to forge unique circumstances for revolt. As the century turned and the Ottomans waned, when the battle began and the war hymns were sung, the wheels of time started to unwind. The Arab Revolt is a tale of the local and the global, of competing nationalisms and of elites furthering their interests, a story whose causes were with us long before the first shot was fired. Thanks to our sponsor, the free online PvP World War I strategy game Supremacy 1914. Lead a campaign of epic battles, diplomacy, trade and technology to take over the world as your chosen state. Click the link in the description to get the game with an exclusive gift, 15,000 gold and 1 month of free premium subscription, but only for the next 30 days, so act fast. We'll have plenty more videos on the tribulations within the Ottoman Empire, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Recently, we've started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive videos. Join the ranks of patrons and YouTube members via the link in the description or by pressing the button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, join our private Discord, and much more. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.